Piper was standing in the middle of my kitchen at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, holding a wooden spoon like it had personally wronged her family. "I followed every single step," she said. "I watched the video 3 times. 3 times, Theo." She stopped. "Wait. You're Theo from the list." She wasn't. I mean, she wasn't talking to me about the list. She was talking about the pasta. The point is, she stopped herself mid-sentence, looked at the pot on my stove, and said, "This is not carbonara. This is punishment." I was leaning against the counter, with a dish towel over my shoulder, trying very hard not to look at the thick yellow scramble of egg and cheese that had seized up around the pasta like concrete. "It has the right ingredients," I said. "It has the right ingredients, the same way a car crash has the right parts. Something went wrong between the idea and the outcome." Behind us, the window above the sink was fogged up from the steam. Outside, it was mid-November in Toronto, which meant the kind of cold that gets into your jacket before you've even made it to the end of the driveway. Piper had shown up 40 minutes earlier, with a grocery bag from the Loblaws on College Street, still in her work coat, hair damp at the ends, from where it had been snowing lightly on her walk from the subway. "You didn't have to make dinner," I'd said when I opened the door. "I want to practice," she said, already moving past me toward the kitchen. "My parents are coming next month, and I told my mom I'd cook something impressive, and now I have to actually do that, instead of ordering from the Italian place and putting it on my own plates." "Plates? You were going to do that?" "I was absolutely going to do that. Now I have to actually your fault for being the only person I can practice on without losing credibility." That was Piper. She moved through my apartment like she knew where everything was. Because she did. She had known where everything was for 4 years, since the day we met in the graduate program orientation for urban planning, and she had taken the empty seat beside me, opened her notebook to a blank page, looked at the professor, and said, quietly, not quite to me, "If he says synergy one more time, I'm going to need a walk." He said it twice more in the first 10 minutes. We both took the walk. We got coffee from the cart outside, and stood in the cold, and she told me her name was Piper Cheng. She was from Mississauga originally. She had done her undergrad at McGill, and she had very strong feelings about which Tim Hortons locations were actually worth going to, which she would share with me if I was interested. I was interested. 4 years later, she was making carbonara in my kitchen. And the carbonara was losing badly. "Okay," I said, stepping closer to look at the pot. "What temperature did you have the burner on when you added the eggs?" "Hot." "Af. How hot?" "Stove hot." I picked up the wooden spoon and prodded the mixture gently. It did not yield. "Piper, you scrambled the eggs." "I did not scramble them. They scrambled themselves. I had no say in this. Scrambled eggs are a choice the cook makes. Scrambled eggs are a betrayal the eggs commit when you're not looking." She crossed her arms. I was stirring. I was doing everything right. And then I looked away for maybe 20 seconds to check the recipe again. And suddenly it looked like someone tried to make an omelet inside a pot of noodles. I could not help it. I laughed. She pointed at me. "Do not laugh. This is a crisis. It's pasta. It's my credibility." I turned the burner down to the lowest setting and started looking through the cupboard for something that might salvage dinner. There was half a block of Parmesan left, some black pepper, a can of chickpeas that had been in there for an honestly suspicious amount of time, and a box of crackers Piper had left here 2 months ago. Month 3. That she kept forgetting to take home. "We can do cacio e pepe," I said. "Fresh pasta, it's simpler. Harder to overcook the eggs, because there are no eggs." That sounds like giving up. That sounds like a pivot. I hate pivots. She pulled herself up to sit on the counter beside the stove the way she always did when she was thinking. Her boots were still on. She was still wearing her work cardigan, the dark green one she'd had since at least second year. "If I serve my parents cacio e pepe and call it a night, My mom is going to ask if I've been eating properly and then offer to send a meal kit subscription. Your mom's meal kits are actually very good. That is not the point. She looked at the failed carbonara. She thinks I can't take care of myself. Can you though? She looked at me. You're on thin ice. I live alone fine, I said. I cook actual food. You make the same 4 things in rotation, and you've had the same bag of frozen edamame in your freezer since August. Edamame keeps. Theo. She said it with the particular weight she reserved for moments when she felt I was missing something obvious. The bag is open. I thought about that for a second. It's probably fine. She closed her eyes. I could see her trying not to smile. That was the thing about Piper. She had a very good resting serious face, but if you caught her at the right moment, you could see the smile forming underneath it, like something trying to get through ice in spring. Most people missed it because they weren't watching for it. I had been watching for it for 4 years, and it still got me every single time. We made cacio e pepe. I did most of the cooking and Piper stood beside me and gave instructions she was making up as she went along. More pepper. Less pepper. You're stirring too fast. Is that enough? Cheese? That's too much cheese. Actually, that might be the right amount of cheese. It was the right amount of cheese. We ate at my kitchen table, which was really just a small round table I'd bought from a Facebook marketplace seller in Leslieville 2 years ago for $60, with 2 chairs that didn't match, in an apartment that was not large but had good south-facing light in the mornings, which Piper claimed was the only reason I'd taken it. She was not wrong. This is actually good, she said. Better than the carbonara. The carbonara is in the garbage where it belongs and we're not talking about it anymore. Noted. I topped up her glass of water. She had brought a bottle of Riesling, but then decided she didn't want wine, which was very Piper. Bring the thing, decide not to use it. How was the presentation today? She exhaled. Long. Good long or bad long? Long. The city councilor kept asking questions that I think were meant to sound skeptical, but actually just showed he hadn't read the report. She tore a piece of bread off the loaf I'd found in the back of the bread box. I've answered the transit question 4 times now. 4 separate meetings. I keep giving the same answer and he keeps looking at me like I'm speaking a language he's choosing not to understand. Is it the same counselor from the March meeting? The very same. She chewed. He has a very confident relationship with being wrong. What did you say? I was polite. That's very unlike you. She pointed at me with the bread. I am polite. You are direct. It's not the same thing, I said. Thank you for raising that point, and then explained it again using smaller words. She looked out the window at the dark street. The snow was coming down heavier now, slow fat flakes, sticking to the outside edge of the glass. I'm tired of explaining things I already explained. I'm tired of being the person in the room who prepared the most and still has to justify it. I looked at her. She was staring at the snow and her jaw was set in the particular way it got when she was trying to talk herself down from something she didn't want to admit bothered her. You're good at what you do? I said. He knows that. That's why he keeps asking you the questions instead of someone else. She looked back at me, skeptical. I'm serious, I said. Difficult people only keep pushing the people they think might actually change their mind. The ones they've written off, they just ignore. Piper was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that's either a good point or a very creative way to reframe something annoying. Both can be true. She looked at me for a second too long, then looked down at her plate. Yeah, she said. Maybe. After dinner she stayed to help clean up, which was also very her. She would never just leave me with the dishes, even if it had been her idea to cook, even if the cooking had not technically produced a successful meal. She washed and I dried because my dish rack was small and optimistic. You have a lot of mugs, she said, handing me one. I like mugs. You have one that says world's okayest engineer, And you're a planner, not an engineer. It was a gift. From who? I thought about it. Honestly, I don't remember. She handed me another mug. This one was from the CN Tower gift shop, circa approximately 2009, which I had absolutely bought for myself on a school trip when I was 12, and kept ever since, because I found it embarrassing to throw out sentimental objects even when the sentiment was unclear. This one is not okay, she said. This one is a classic. This one is a cry for help. She set the next dish in the rack. Outside, the streetcar made its low metal sound going up the street. Can I ask you something? You always ask anyway. I always ask first, she said. I have manners. What is it? She didn't answer right away. She rinsed a pot and handed it to me, and I held it and waited. Piper did everything in her own time. You learned that early if you knew her well enough. She was not someone you could rush. My coworker Beatrice set me up on a date last week, she said finally. I didn't mention it because it wasn't a big deal. It was coffee. At the place on Queen near her office. I kept drying the pot. How was it? Fine. He was fine. He works in environmental consulting. He had good opinions about bike lanes. She paused. I drove home and thought, that was fine. And then I felt like something was wrong with me, because fine should be enough to try again. And I just didn't want to. What was missing? She looked at the water running over her hands. I don't know. He was objectively fine. Good job. Nice. Laughed at the right moments. Didn't say anything weird. She turned the tap off. I just kept thinking. I would rather be texting Theo right now about something dumb. And that felt like a problem I wasn't ready to look at. Write in the comments. Have you ever had a moment like that, where you realized the person you actually wanted to talk to wasn't the one sitting across from you? I set the pot down carefully. Piper. Yeah. You just said my name in that story. I'm aware. You said you'd rather be texting me. She turned around and leaned back against the sink with her arms crossed, not defensively. Just like she needed something solid behind her. I know what I said. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, or maybe I was just noticing it differently. The light above the stove was the only one on, that warm yellow that makes everything look more serious than it probably is at 11:30 on a Tuesday. How long? I said. She raised an eyebrow. That's a very direct question from someone who also hasn't said anything. I'm asking. I'm aware. She looked at the window, then back at me. I don't know exactly. I think it's been gradual, the kind of thing you don't notice until you're in a coffee shop with someone perfectly decent and you're thinking about a conversation you had 2 days ago with someone else, and you realize you've been comparing people to a standard you didn't decide on consciously. What standard? You, apparently. She said it plainly, with the same tone she used for everything, direct, a little dry, fully committed. You're patient. You don't make me feel stupid for caring about things. You remember things I said 3 months ago that I'd already forgotten, I said. You showed up to help me move last February in -20 weather and didn't complain once. I complained twice. You complained about the elevator, which was fair, and about my box labeling system, which was also fair. Those are not real complaints. Those are accurate observations. Her voice was even, but her hands were tight against her arms. I've been telling myself it's just that we're close, that I'm comfortable with you, that it's friendship, and I'm reading into it, because dating is hard, and it's easier to want what's already there. Is that what you think it is? She looked at me carefully. I think I stopped believing that around your birthday in September. I frowned. My birthday was a disaster. Your birthday was fine. The reservation got canceled. We ended up eating shawarma at that place on Bloor in the rain, because the patio wasn't covered, and we didn't figure that out until we were already seated. Yes, and you dropped your entire wrap on the sidewalk. That was a dark moment. And then we stood under the awning of the dry cleaner next door, and ate the rest of mine, and argued about whether the blade was better than the first. For 45 minutes, while it kept raining. The second one is better. It is not. She looked at me with something quiet in her expression. You shared your dinner with me on your own birthday without making it a thing. You didn't act like it was a sacrifice. You just handed me half and kept talking. She uncrossed her arms. I thought, this person is someone I trust completely. And then I thought, that's either a best friend or a problem. And I've been figuring out which one ever since. My chest felt tight in a way I was used to ignoring. I had gotten good at that. 4 years of getting good at it. I've done the same thing, I said. She went still. What? Every time I've gone out with someone in the last 2 years. I put the dish towel down on the counter, because I didn't need something to do with my hands. I just kept finding things to do with them. There was someone last spring. We went out 4 times. She was smart, she was funny, she was interested in similar things. I kept waiting to feel certain, and I didn't. I looked at Piper. I'd go home and think about whether you'd think she was funny. Whether you two would get along. Whether whatever I was feeling was actually real or just proximity. That's not a great sign. No, it isn't. Did you like her? I liked her the way you like a neighborhood you could live in, but no, you won't. Piper stared at me for a second. That's a very planner thing to say. Occupational hazard. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but landed somewhere more complicated than that. Theo, she said it carefully. What are we doing? I think we're having a conversation we should have had a while ago. How while ago? That's the part I'm still working out. I picked up the dish towel again, realized I'd already set it down on purpose, and put it back. I know when I noticed. I don't know when it started. When did you notice? Last winter, you called me at 11 at night because your radiator was making a noise, and you didn't know if you should be worried about it. She made a small sound. That was a very strange noise. It was a radiator knocking. It's normal, I came over anyway. You didn't have to. I know. I looked at her, but I was in the middle of watching something I'd been waiting to see for a month. And I turned it off, and came over. And I didn't think twice about it, not once. And then I was sitting on your floor looking at the radiator, and you made tea, and we ended up talking until 1 in the morning about nothing in particular, and I walked home in the cold and thought. That was the best part of my week, without trying to be. Piper's face had gone through several quiet changes while I was talking. Not dramatic ones. Just the small shifts that happened when she was paying close attention to something and letting herself feel it instead of filing it. I've been scared, she said, to say anything, because you're the person I'd call if something went wrong after I said it. You're the one I'd want to talk to if I was upset, which means if this went badly I'd be upset about something, and also have lost the person I'd call when I was upset. That's a solid argument for not saying anything. It's the argument I've been making to myself for about a year. Is it working? She looked at me. Clearly not. The fridge hummed. Outside, the snow was still coming down. Someone walked by on the sidewalk below, boots crunching. The kitchen felt entirely still in the way spaces do when 2 people have stopped pretending the conversation is about something else. I'm not good at this, I said. Saying it part. I'm better at showing up. I'm better at practical things. You literally showed up in -20 to carry boxes. Right, and you've been here every time I needed someone to be, for 4 years, and you never made it feel like a favor. It wasn't a favor. She looked at me with something that wasn't quite surprise, and wasn't quite not surprise. Like she'd been hoping I'd say that and was still doing the work of believing it. Theo. Her voice was quieter. Are you going to say something? Or are we going to stand in your kitchen having almost conversations until one of us leaves? I took a step forward, not a confident one, just a step. I think about you first, I said. When something good happens. When something frustrating happens. When nothing happens, and I just want someone to be there while it doesn't. I've spent 4 years making peace with that being friendship, because anything else felt like too much to risk. I stopped. It's too much to keep not saying. Piper didn't move. She looked at me, and her face did that thing, the small unguarding, all the pieces of her expression going quiet at once. Okay, she said. Okay? I mean, she stopped. I don't know what else to say. You just said the thing I've been not saying. I'm trying to catch up. Take your time. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. I made terrible carbonara in your kitchen tonight. You did, and we made Theo and Piper instead, and it was actually fine. Better than fine. And now we're here. She looked around the kitchen like she was orienting herself. This is a lot of feelings to have in a room that still smells like burnt eggs. I can open a window. Please don't. It's -15 outside. I know. She looked at me for a long moment. Her arms were at her sides. She wasn't guarding anything anymore. I would rather be here, she said. In this kitchen, with this conversation, than at that coffee shop with someone perfectly decent. I think that means something. I think it does too. She took a breath. You should know I'm going to be annoying about it. I know. I'll overthink things out loud. I'll need to process. I'll probably call you at a weird hour to talk about whether we handled something right. That's not different from what you already do. She almost smiled. Fair. But now it'll be about us. I'm okay with that. You say that now. I know myself well enough. She studied me like she was looking for the catch and not finding one. Then she stepped forward, closing the distance between us, in a way that was quiet and deliberate, and she reached up and took my hand, not dramatically, just held it. The same hand she'd grabbed when we were running through the rain after that conference in Ottawa and couldn't find a cab. The same hand she'd squeezed briefly in a hospital waiting room, when her dad had a scare last spring and I came. And I'd shown up because she'd texted me, and she had always reached for me at the moments that mattered. I had just spent 4 years categorizing it as friendship, because that was the safest word I had. Okay, she said again. But differently this time. Less like she was catching up, more like she'd arrived. She looked up at me and the almost smile made it all the way through this time. You're still standing next to a pot you didn't wash, I said. She looked over her shoulder. That's the carbonara pot. Still needs to be washed. It can wait until morning. It really can't. Egg residue gets, Theo. She said it with her full resting serious face directed entirely at me. I just told you I have feelings for you. In your kitchen, at almost midnight. Do not make me wash the egg pot. I laughed. She didn't let go of my hand. Fine, I said. Leave the pot. Thank you. You'll have to wash it in the morning. I know. It'll be worse by then. I am aware of the consequences of my choices. She turned back toward me. I'd like to stay for a bit. If that's okay, yeah, I said. That's okay. She ended up on my couch, with her feet tucked under her, and the Riesling she'd brought finally open. And I made tea because I didn't want wine, and we talked for 2 more hours about things that were not the conversation we'd just had, but were easier now because of it. At some point the snow stopped and the street outside got that particular quiet that only happens after a heavy snowfall. Like the city was catching its breath. I didn't want her to leave. I also didn't say that, because some things you're allowed to just feel without cataloging them immediately. You learn that with Piper. She understands the pauses between things. She's always been good at letting a moment be what it is without rushing to name it. She left around 1:30, coat and boots on, at the door, scarf wound twice around, because she was always cold when she was tired. The pot, I said. I'll come back for the pot. That's not how cleaning works. That's how I work. She pulled the door open. The hallway was quiet and bright. Good night, Theo. Good night, Piper. She looked at me once more before she turned. There was nothing dramatic in it, just Piper, looking at me the way she always had, except now, we'd both stopped pretending that it didn't mean anything. She walked to the elevator and I closed the door and stood in my kitchen and thought about the fact that the carbonara was in the garbage and the cassio e pepe bowl was washed, and there was still a pot on the stove I should deal with tonight. I didn't deal with it tonight. I left it and went to stand by the window and watched the street below, and in a few minutes I saw her come out of the building door, turn up her collar against the cold, and walk toward the subway. Just before she got to the corner, she looked back at the window. I don't know if she could see me from there. She gave a small wave anyway. I raised my hand. She turned the corner. The street was quiet. Snow lay flat and undisturbed on the parked cars, on the front steps of the houses across the street, on the tree branches down the block, on everything the city had put down before we'd decided to say the thing we'd been not saying for 4 years. 1 week later, she came back for the pot. She also brought groceries. She also tried to make carbonara again. She also made me watch 3 separate tutorial videos first, which I watched in full because that was the deal. The carbonara was not perfect. It was better than last time. The eggs did not scramble. The pasta was properly coated, and she stood at the stove with her whole body tense with focus, wooden spoon moving carefully, and when she lifted the spoon and the sauce fell in a slow ribbon, she turned and looked at me with the expression of someone who had won something hard. "That," she said, "is carbonara. That's carbonara." She looked entirely too pleased with herself. I was entirely okay with that. I had been okay with Piper looking pleased with herself in my kitchen for 4 years. Now I just didn't have to pretend that noticing it was casual. "You're staring," she said, not looking up from the pot. "I'm supervising. You're staring." She glanced at me sideways. "It's fine. You can stare." "I know I can." She rolled her eyes, but the smile was already there before she could stop it. We ate at the small round table that didn't quite fit 2 people comfortably. She sat across from me with her knees occasionally bumping mine under the table, and she didn't move them and neither did I. Outside, it had started snowing again, which in Toronto means roughly nothing, because it is November, and that is simply what happens. And the street light made the snow look orange on the way down. Some things don't change when you finally say what you've been thinking. She was still opinionated about Tim Hortons locations. I was still someone who kept a suspicious amount of edamame in the freezer. She still sat on my counter when she was thinking. I still dried while she washed. But some things shift quietly. The way she looked at me across the table. The way I didn't look away. The way both of us had stopped spending energy on not noticing. That part was new. I didn't need it to be anything more dramatic than that. It was enough.